Hi, you obviously will know me. For the benefit of those who don't know me, I'm Nigel Rumble. I'm one of the members of HPCC here in London. Today I'm going to be talking about software emulation as a basis for preservation. This is something I've been very interested in for a couple of years now, mainly because I only have a very limited number of HP calculators. So for me, this has been a way to augment my interest and my collection. But moving on. Basically, we have the HP legacy hardware. Now, many of you have actual hardware. One moment, I'm just going to go and get something which I had forgotten to get previously, which is actually quite important. Of course, you don't know what that is. Right, I shall refer to this later. Of course, you probably can guess what this is. Right, so we have HP legacy hardware, and then we have the current lineup of calculators. Now, as you know, the current lineup are not actually made by HP themselves, and for many of us that collect old legacy calculators, it kind of misses the nuance and the feeling of the old machines. So then we have the official HP emulators, which you can buy, the commercial emulators, and they actually look just like the original machine that they emulate. They're official in that they've been subcontracted out using exactly the same type of code to give the same answers and the same result. The main overview of what I'm doing today is overviewing the best available commercial software and free HP emulators. So let's just go back. Right. I know many of you probably would say, why bother to emulate what we already have? This actually is a HP 12. Now, I shall mention that at the end, but that's a HP 12. So why bother to emulate what we already have? I think there's many reasons to emulate them. Number one is convenience of a portable HP device function actually on the smartphone. Smartphone, I've got virtually every HP calculator made on here. I can be on a tube train. I can run actual emulation of an actual program. That's a very nice thing to be able to do. Zero maintenance. There's no maintenance, obviously, for a machine. You just run the software code. The emulation software has no end date. You can pretty much run it forever if you're careful with the various operating systems that you use. These things, HP and any electronic modular device has a limited life. We've been told when we went to Cambridge to the excellent calculator museum that by the curator that plastic itself actually will degrade, and at some point plastic will actually turn to yuck. I don't know if that's a technical expression. We know that solder grows whiskers, especially the modern solders that I use, and the PCBs and ICs degrade over time. So we can expect these devices at some point will be unserviceable because you won't be able to get the original ICs. So that's kind of the direction where I'm traveling. And there's another aspect. As calculator collectors, I don't have a very big collection. I have probably about less than 10. I know some of you have a lot more. But purchasing original legacy calculators, it can be quite prohibitive, especially some of the very exotics like HP 97s and things like that. But an emulator is virtually free. So how does it feel? Does the emulator feel like the real thing? Well, no. I mean, it feels synthetic because you're actually using a glass screen, using a touch screen, which I will show later when I demo some of these. Does it have tactile feedback? No. Though some of the better ups can actually augment that with Taptic engine on the devices, so you actually get a vibration when you touch what is a representation of a button. No dedicated keys. That's obviously a physical thing. I mean, obviously a real calculator has actual real keys, which when you press feel nice. It's not a designed unit, and however, there is a way to fool the brain, which is where I'm going to go next. So, the state of HP Calculator emulation, where are we? I think we've reached a point where we have excellent emulators now. I mean, I'm really seriously impressed. I know I've been talking when I've been coming to the club, you know, about emulators, and they really impressed me a lot. Here's a little line chart which I've just drawn. So the very first generation of emulators were very simple, based on just a generic platform, sort of things you would get with Google, with Apple, very, very simple, or you would have a simple form factor of a simple calculator. Then the second generation came in with more realistic designs, actual emulations of actual calculators, you know, such as, for example, HP-12C, which was one of the early ones to actually come out, released actually by HP through, I think, in America, Royal. And then we have the third part, the third wave, which is experimenters, people that have created commercial software and also free public domain software using actual ROM code. The actual ROM code that's actually in these things. As you know, there's been some of our colleagues in America who have actually effectively extracted the code from the ROM and made those ROM codes available. And in some cases, in the HP Museum, there's actually some pictograms which you may have seen, which actually is the ROM code, the actual ROM code of many of the legacy devices. And if you decode the data in the correct way, you have a ROM code image. So the emulators are built to tap into that original ROM code, which means that the functionality is extremely accurate, and the result you would get is very, almost identical, in fact, to a physical machine. Where we are now is pretty much there, but we have much more diversity of emulators available, which is what I'm going to demonstrate a little bit later. However, I do see a future, and I think the future is kind of already here. Swiss Micros, which I know, I haven't bought one yet, but I know some of you have Swiss Micros. They have created a calculator which kind of looks like HP, but it's not a HP. I think it actually has a socket so you can plug it into your laptop. It's programmable, it has a much larger screen, it's augmented. That's one way to go. And then, of course, we have the excellent, which I have bought, the HP 15 Collector's Edition, which I haven't bought today, but I know some of you have already bought those. And that's another way to go. That that actually is an emulation. It's not running the real, effectively the real ROM code. I mean, it probably is, but it's running on top of another platform, which is an ARM processor. But I see the future for us. Sorry, I went back. I see the future for us as possibly a system that we haven't seen yet, which is where you have an adaptive device calculator. And we need some electronics people, actually, Tony. We need some electronics people who could actually maybe design one of these. It would look like a generic calculator, but it would have all the buttons, probably the maximum buttons you would have on a HP calculator, and they could be soft programmed, meaning that the actual physical buttons with little LCD matrices or whatever built into the buttons could actually be adaptively changed to actually have on-the-fly modifications. So within that system, you could actually emulate all the HP calculators, and just at a switch, you could make that unit behave just like the actual calculator with real display. Key thing though, it would have real buttons. Sure, it wouldn't look exactly like the real device, but it would feel and touch. So that might be a way for the future, which would be a form of emulation, but taking it to the next level. So, obviously you've been waiting for the demo, which I'm going to give, but just before I go, is emulation preservation? I've already had a discussion, I know, with Tony. I know Tony would have a comment on that, and many of you probably would as well. In my opinion, emulation is not preservation. Does emulation preserve the function? Well, yes, it does. I mean, if we can preserve the function, the brain in here, of this is HP-12C, just turn that on, HP-12C, then we have preserved this system. And the enhancers of the experience, in my opinion, are the real HP manuals, either physical or PDF. And we've got Eric to thank for the wonderful job that he's been doing in the United States at scanning all the manuals. So I think together with an emulator, the actual original copy or visual facsimile of the manual, I think that enhances the entire experience. And actually, that's how I use my emulators. I normally do a split screen, so I have the calculator on one half, and on the other half, I have the PDF of the actual manual. So that's me. Those of you here, of course, will know me, but for those of you seeing the presentation who don't know me, that's my contact details on this slide. So do feel free to contact. So with no further ado now, I'm going to go straight into some examples of the presentation, that was the presentation. So to start with, we have the HP12C. This is the official HP12C emulator by HP. It's licensed, I believe it's licensed from Royal. It functions just like the real machine. There are a few differences though. If I touch and press the logo, the HP12C logo on the top right, we get that. So we can actually see the back of the. Oh, there it is. So you can actually see the back. This is in a horizontal format. That seems they obviously thought it would look kind of cool in a vertical format, but exactly the same information as that. Press that again, it disappears. The one thing which you might notice, which looks really radically different, is the on button, because obviously this is a physical device, you can turn it on and off, has been replaced by a menu button. That brings up the various menus, which is specific to things on your device. So for example, you can have vibration, which this has a Taptic Engine, this tablet. And if you do this on the phone, same thing, Taptic Engine. So I would certainly recommend sound off, and I would certainly recommend vibration on, because that actually enhances the experience and makes, you're welcome to try it on my phone later, enhances the experience and makes it feel like you actually are pressing the button. So that's really a crucial thing to do. I have checked this out against the manual when I first bought this, actually, it was about £15. It really does perform exactly like that in precisely the same way. You know, it does exactly the same calculations as you would expect. There really isn't too much to say about the emulation. I mean, it obviously emulates the F and G key. It does exactly the same thing. I can actually feel the vibrations here. It does all the financial stuff. So that's an example of a very early, very successful HP12C. Same as that, it looks exactly the same, and if you've got that on your mobile phone, essentially you have got HP12C.
Nigel, how much program memory do you get in this emulation?
It's exactly the same as what would be on the physical device. Exactly the same as what's on the physical device. More interestingly, perhaps, Frank, is the HP15C. The collector's edition, which I know many of us have actually bought, apologies for not turning it off, has augmented memory, has extra memory. This version here is the HP Royal one, so it has the same number of memory for the matrices and so on. It does exactly the same thing. You can try it later if you like, but it's identical to the physical machine of the original early machine. Has the same ROM code in there, has the same on the back. Menu is pretty much the same as the previous menu, so we don't worry about that. So yeah, I mean it's exactly precisely the same function as the original machine. In this particular case here, these are the official ones from HP through their partners. As you know, HP don't actually do these anymore. So it's just that they license this, and they license the use of the HP logo, and most importantly, they license the name Hewlett-Packard here, which the collector's edition haven't done that. They haven't licensed that name. They only have the authority to put HP on the top right. So this is probably a closer facsimile actually than the collector's edition. Again, that runs on the phone, runs on the tablet. You can run it in a weird vertical format, but why anybody would want to do that, I honestly don't know. I suppose it's a matter of taste. You know, if you want to do that kind of thing. that's the memory. So I just pressed blue, hold that down, so you can see 1946. So I mean, it's exactly the same configuration as the previous calculator. Now, on the screen here, which you see, and this is what I've done, I've just put a few, because I've actually got all of them. I spent maybe £200 buying all these programs. They're not that expensive, but of course, when you buy lots, they do add up. So this particular ones are available mostly on Android. So you won't find all of these anywhere else. These will be on Android. You will find some of these on the Windows platform, where you can actually run it in an emulator on an actual Windows screen. Apple is not quite so well covered. There are some of these programs, like the official ones I showed you earlier, those are available exactly the same on Apple devices. But for this, you really need an Android at the moment, or an Android emulator. I can actually run these on my Chromebook, because Chromebook actually also runs Android as well. However, the ones I wanted to show you, the ones that work horizontally, because otherwise I would have to do this, and I don't want to do that. Starting with the HP 28S, which I'm now the proud owner of a 28S, and thank you for that. So I mean, I've actually got a real physical 28S now, which is wonderful. This is the emulation for the 28S, which does exactly the same thing. Now, this has the actual ROM code that comes from a 28S. So it's not a simulation. This is actually pure emulation, which is I think is quite amazing. I mean, it emulates using the same dots on the screen. What more can I say? I mean, it really is
one big difference. On the genuine machine, the menu labels stay exactly lined up with the top row keys.
Oh yeah. That's
a pity. It doesn't.
Yeah, that is a pity actually with this, that you cannot actually do that. You are right. You can also, this also has, this calculator. Those of you who were lucky enough to get the printer. Now, I don't actually have the printer yet, but I do actually have one of these machines, which I'm very proud to actually own that. The emulation emulates a printer as well. So obviously, you can see that there. So if we go to, this is probably where I'm challenged, because the size is actually quite small. This may or may not work. I'm not sure. If I do a refresh, possibly. Yeah, it is working quite nice there. So, and we can advance the paper. So, which is quite nice. Right, so we can turn that on. Did it actually give the answer? I can see the answer here. Yeah, okay. It has. So, very nice to have that, because obviously, again, you can, in theory, do that on this. When you run this particular program by this particular programmer on a phone, it presents only one half of the screen. So you see that half. Then if you touch the middle part of the screen here, it then flips over to that keyboard. So you can actually run this on this. So that's where I'm very impressed with this particular program. I know it doesn't physically look like the machine, but it has that one ability which is particularly really nice, where you can actually run it on a tablet like this, where you can see the whole thing on the screen, as you can see here, or you can see it like that. And if you touch there, you can maybe see that it actually flicks over the keyboards. So it's a really nice programming, very neat. When you buy this particular program, it doesn't come with any brain. It doesn't come with any ROM. It's just basically a user interface. You have to download the ROM code from the HP Calc library, where we all do for the actual ROM code libraries. Pop the ROM code into the relevant place in the directory structure in Android, and amazingly, away it goes. So that's a good example of HP 28. This is something different. I just threw this in. This is, you may have seen this. This is another emulator. This is totally free. The other one I had to pay for, not much, £7 I think. This one is totally free. So this is one of these shareware type thing. This, I believe, is available exclusively on Android. You can get this on the Windows platform as well, and I think possibly even Apple. I'm not sure about that. Now this is a facsimile of a 28C. It looks exactly like the 28C, and of course it does what you expect it to do. There's also another version, which if I go into the various emulators here, where you can emulate a 28S as well. So this actually looks exactly, this is a photographic representation of a 28S. Of course, it goes without saying the function is exactly the same as the actual machine. Personally, I prefer the other one because it's easier to read the buttons. This is a good point about emulators. This one emulates the actual buttons, and it looks just like the real machine, but it's quite difficult sometimes to see what's the red details here because it's quite small. But when you go to something like this, because it's not aiming to be, it's actually very easy to read. So it just shows you emulators don't necessarily need to look like what it is. For all of you, I think many of you have got this. I don't actually have one, but this is a HP 50. It doesn't quite look like a HP 50, I know, but you can go into the settings and make it into a vertical format if you want to do that. I prefer it like this because this is a tablet, but that is a HP 50, and this is using the latest ROM code that is available from where you would download your ROM code for your machine if you needed to update it. So it's using the genuine ROM code from our usual place where we would download that from our website. So HP 50. This is probably not going to be so exciting for many of you because you can actually buy this, but of course there is a HP 12 Prime, and again you can have it in the vertical format, or when you use it on a tablet horizontally, it goes into this format here, which I actually quite like. Of course, like most of you, I have a Prime, so that's kind of where we at. I mean, I think the ones which are really the nicest to use, of course, are the ones which really have their name on it. However, I know some of you are very interested in HP16s. Now, I actually have the physical HP16 because that's really where I came in with HP. Being a computer scientist, I actually got 2 HP16s, and I just love those machines, and I don't think I would ever part with those. I mean, I've got those, and I just love those. But I do have an emulator for that too. So if I go into my HP Calculator library here, I have a very good emulator for the 16C, this is totally free, and I believe this is also available on iOS and Apple as well. It's Jovel. It's a programmer, and he's done a really excellent job. I think if you press the 16C logo at the top, you can go into Help, and then from there, it's not quite as polished as the others, but it works very well. And then you can select Back Panel, and there you go. So that's exactly the back panel that you would have on the machine. You can also go into Settings, where there are quite a lot of things you can set. You can, for example, showing word size, integer mode, commas, and so forth. I'm not sure I actually really wanted to do that, but I'm going to turn that one off for a moment because the real machine wouldn't normally do that. So, yeah, it's really a nice thing to have. Let's do an and, shall we? Yeah, so I'm ending there. That's actually nearly 30 minutes. So that's the HP16C. Now I know we are mostly HP, but just to show that we are, are inclusive here, I suppose I ought to show 3 more calculators, just as a final closing note. Number 1 is, yes, we can actually run Texas Instruments as well. And you may recognize that that is a TI-59. And yes, it has the ROM code library built into that, and it works really well. So for those that do like HPs, and this I think is a 97, isn't it? So this is a 97. We also have a 97 too. This is one of my favorite emulators. It's just great. I mean, because I don't physically have this, I'm actually really nice to touch that. Actually, it's a really lovely thing to have. So here's an emulator of this, and including the emulation of the printer as well. So we can put that into trace mode, enter some numbers, like so, refresh and advance. And there you have it. So wonderful emulation. You can also emulate actual cards. So you can actually emulate an actual magnetic card that goes in here, and put your program and change the actual meaning of these cards and create a virtual card. So if I select that card for a moment, insert that into card 1, okay, it now wants me to indicate, I'm going to put card 2 as well. There's a slight bug, you notice that. So this is a problem with emulators. You are a little bit sometimes on your own. The reason it doesn't work here, it doesn't work with this particular screen format size. If you run it on a different screen format size, that card will be the correct size and it will fit between A and E. So that's an example of an emulator going wrong. But it kind of still works. Anyway, so that is emulators. Any questions?
Quick comment. You mentioned, first of all, no maintenance, but surely you have to maintain what it runs on.
Good question.
Which is a lot more difficult than the real machine.
Yeah, that actually is a
And secondly, you said you spent about £200 on your emulator program.
Oh, over
the whole lot, yeah. And we're then talking perhaps 300 for the smartphone to run them on.
True. Well, I have a smartphone anyway.
But I have spent rather less than that on my chest of drawers packed full of genuine HPs. Well, including 297s, I may add.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, you
and 1241s and 467s and a 65 and
let me get on the screen something which I forgot to show you. You might find this interesting. This is a 41.
But it won't do what my 41 will do.
Well, this is a 41. That, of course, is a 41 with a printer. Now, for those who can't guess what that is, this is an emulation of the Light Scribe barcode scanning pen.
What it will not do is control my bench of test equipment.
No, it probably will not do
that. Which my genuine 41 does.
Yes, yeah, I know.
I have an 8169 interface.
What this does, what yours doesn't do, is that if you look at the top of the display and touch that area, it has some extra augmented functionality. So you can see what's in the stack. So if I enter 4, enter 3, enter 2, enter 1, you will see that each of those numbers have been entered into the stack at the top. If you press that screen there, as you do it in the correct place.
You sure the video interface in trace mode will do that?
It probably would do that as well. But I'm just saying it has a bit of extra function, which is quite nice. But anyway, let's get rid of that. And it was actually printing there as well. So to answer your 2 questions then, maintenance, yeah, of course. It goes without saying that you do need to maintain your platform and you do need to maintain your own library of Android code. Because if you just rely on Google once you've purchased a program, or Apple, there's no guarantee that that program will be available forever. It could be removed from the library store. Now, there's a program many programs you can get, which actually basically extract your library, your app, and you create a backup of that app, which of course you own it, you have the license of it, and it has embedded in that app code your actual purchase identifier. So you can do with that as you feel. I actually store that to my Google Cloud, because that's an extra level of security, and also externally as well. So I have a permanent backup of that. In terms of the device, yes, you need to have a device in the future that will run that particular version of the Google code. There's always a risk that things might break. So there is an element of maintenance. So what you probably want to do if you're a collector. This is the latest, one of the new Android things. I've got some old tablets, which are not much good for anything else because they're very slow. They run an old version of Android, but guess what? They run the calculator code fantastically. So that's like.
But surely they will decay in the way that the real calculators do.
They will, yeah, they will. But the actual code itself is backed up in the cloud. It's backed up, so you can always find a way to emulate what runs on Android in the future. So my prospect of preservation is that yes, there will be problems on the way, but I wouldn't mind betting that maybe in 200 or 300 years from now, which of course none of us can test, but in 200 or 300 years from now, you probably will find a way to run one of these emulator programs on a device, because somebody will obviously make sure there's an emulator that can emulate something.
There'll be an emulated Android phone, yeah.
Probably. Or the continuation of the concept of emulating things. But the physical devices, I mean, will eventually decay away. What was your other question?
Just the cost, wasn't it?
Oh, the cost, yeah. Okay, well, the cost of the phone, I would say, or the tablet, is kind of cost neutral in the sense that I need this device anyway, because this is where I write stuff, my word processor, keyboard. I need that to communicate with people in my case. This is my multi-purpose device for everything, so I don't factor that in the cost, but the actual stuff where to buy some of the commercial ones, yes, absolutely, that is a cost, but it's a relatively small cost. I mean, I've looked on the, for example, HP, what's this? This is a HP 67. I've looked for HP 67 because I love to get one. It's a very nice copy by the looks of it. And these things can be incredibly expensive. That's somebody's mobile.